Hello again everyone and welcome back to GT7 Custom Project Set 1. Today we're on the third car of the set, the Emory Porsche Outlaw. For those unfamiliar with the concept of a Porsche Outlaw, they are essentially racing modifications of the Porsche 356 family of cars, with lots of different custom models made with all types of 356, like the Type A, the Type B, etc. This example here is the Emory Outlaw, a model based on the Porsche 356A, which is currently the only 356 in GT7. Like the other cars in the series, the livery on this car has been made by a member of the community, and I have left a link to it in the description so you can download it and use it for yourselves. As always, be sure to like the original creator's work and send them some love from this video. So, let's head to the tuning shop and fit our custom parts. So, the real-life Emory Outlaw is an absolute over-the-top car with over 200 brake horsepower, which doesn't sound like a lot by modern standards, but considering the base car has less than 100, and in both forms the car only weighs 840 kilos, it is incredibly quick. Unfortunately, we can't get the 356 in-game to quite the level of the real-life car. We can only get it to 188 brake horsepower instead of 205. But I still think the car is really fast, really fun, and will be pretty enjoyable for anyone who chooses to use it. So we'll start with the parts in the sports section, which I ultimately didn't use any of the parts here. I experimented a lot with different parts for this build, but I didn't end up using any of the parts in the sports section. For the club sports section though, we have the bore up, we have the high lift camshaft, high compression pistons, and the close ratio transmission high. This is because the car actually is listed to have specifically a close ratio transmission gearbox as opposed to like a kind of racing transmission gearbox. So for realism, I think it would be better to go for this gearbox, but if you were looking to get better performance and more customizability with your gear ratios, definitely go for the racing transmission. But I'm just trying to keep this as close to the real car as possible here. So in semi-racing, we have the racing crankshaft fitted, the fully customizable computer, and the fully customizable LSD. In racing, we have stroke up, we have engine balance tuning, we have polished ports, we have the racing air filter, racing silencer, the racing exhaust manifold, the racing brake pads. You can use either of the racing brake discs, but I've gone for the carbon ones, but you can use these ones if you want. You also need the fully customizable suspension, the racing clutch and flywheel, and racing hard tires, but you can always swap them out for racing softs if you would prefer. And finally, in the extreme section, you don't need anything, but I went for the carbon brake discs because I just prefer the look of them. Although on this car, you can't really see them. I fitted the brakes before I put the livery on, so. But it doesn't actually matter really for this car. You might want to just use the regular racing discs since you can't see them on this car anyway. But now that we have all our parts fitted, we can come back to the garage and we can look at the tuning settings for this car. So, into our tuning settings here, as you can see, we have our racing hard tires equipped. We've got our suspension with 125mm on front and rear for body height. The anti-roll bar is set to 6 for front and rear. The damping ratio on compression is 36 on front and rear with 44 on expansion. Natural frequency is 2.00 on both front and back. The negative camber is 2.5 front and back. The toe angle is 0.15 out on the front and 0.20 in on the rear. For our differential, I've gone for 5 on initial torque, 25 for acceleration sensitivity, and 35 for braking sensitivity, all on the rear because this car is rear-wheel drive and not four-wheel drive. Into the next section, our downforce is untouched because we don't have those parts fitted. The ECU is fully customizable with it set to 100. The ballast and power restrictor are not touched. We have the close ratio high transmission fitted, and there is no nitros fitted, although you could if you wanted to. The next section, the supercharged section, we can't fit anything here because it's naturally aspirated. Into the intake exhaust, we have the racing air cleaner, silencer, and exhaust manifold. For the brakes, we got our carbon brake discs, our racing brake pads, and the other two are untouched. For our clutch and flywheel, we have the racing one, and then you can see here all our permanent engine mods. One thing, if you manage to get the titanium connecting rods and pistons in a wheel spin, definitely fit it. It'll give you more horsepower. I don't know if you'll quite get to 205. I doubt it, but I haven't won the part in a spin, so I can't clarify for sure. if that would actually get you up to 205, but definitely fit it if you win it. So, now that our car is set up, we can take it out to the track and see how it performs. So, how does this car perform? This Outlaw replica feels really quick despite only having 188 brake horsepower, compared to the real car's 205. It can definitely be a little skittish through corners, but that's pretty much what you'd expect from any sports car from the 50s, tuned or otherwise. So, to keep it realistic, it isn't going to do all the work for you, and it's not going to suddenly feel like a modern day car with loads of driving aids. It still feels like a car from its time, and to be honest, I like that about it, because cars that are older road cars especially, tends to have poorer control than newer cars, because we have different technologies available to us today. So I feel like if you could drive an older road car specifically with good skill and you can actually handle it well, I think it could be a really rewarding experience. So having said all that, when you do drive it well, it is a really fun car to drive, and it can actually be useful in some events. Of course, it's a bit underpowered for any of the cash grind events currently in the game, but it is surprisingly good in some other events. The one that surprised me the most was the European Clubman Cup 600 events. I tested it at Alsace and the Nürburgring events, and it surprised me, to be honest. Up against cars that were far more powerful, had far greater top speed, and with higher acceleration, this Outlaw replica was able to win. Quite comfortably on Alsace. It struggled a bit more on the Nürburgring, but it was definitely a great competitor for the Alsace event. I would actually recommend using it for that one. I also tested it on a few of the Porsche Cup events. These were definitely a bit more challenging for the Outlaw, but I was able to get a win in the select events that I tried. So if you're looking for a challenge on some of those events, I'd recommend giving this a go. This car's biggest advantage is how light it is, because lighter cars tend to have better performance. That's just a general rule. Like, if you could get the car as light as possible, it will be able to go faster, in theory. But this could also be seen as its biggest downfall, because at 840 kilos, the car is very light, but low weight really bumps up the point level in Gran Turismo 7 by a lot, which means this car isn't eligible for some events where it could really be a dominant choice. But it definitely does have some niche uses, and you'll definitely have fun with it on online races as well. So, that's going to be it for this video. Stay tuned for the next video in the series coming out tomorrow, and thank you all for watching, and have a great day.